Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Stanley Wu, and I am the Omega Coordinator and the Director of the Resilience Project. This webinar is hosted by the Omega Collaborative. That is a group working on the global poly crisis that includes the Millennium Alliance for Humanity in the Biosphere at Stanford, the Kranz Foresight Analysis Nexus, or the FAN Initiative, the New School at Commonweal, and the Resilience Project. Today, we're delighted to be joined by Dr. Tatsujiro Suzuki, who will lead this week's urgent follow-up discussion on the Ukraine nuclear reactor and the implications of damage to the largest power plant in Europe. Dr. Suzuki currently serves as both the Vice Director and Professor of Research for Nuclear Weapons Abolition at Nagasaki University, and he is also the former Vice Chairman of the Japan Atomic Energy Commission. This conversation will be hosted by Michael Lerner and Joan Diamond. And a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the chat to both panelists and attendees, and we'll get to as many questions as we're able to. Also, please note that this webinar will be recorded and posted on the Omega website. Now, without further ado, Joan Diamond.
Well, welcome everyone this morning, afternoon, evening, depending upon where you are in the world. When Dr. Suzuki spoke to us last spring, we explored nuclear power plant safety and security in the context of the Russian invasion of the Ukraine. Some thought the Omega Collaborative was being a bit speculative, maybe even alarmist for hosting such a meeting. I had many plausible scenarios of radiation release in my head, but none of them covered the deliberate weaponizing of a nuclear power plant as we are experiencing today. Dr. Suzuki has agreed to return to us today to update us on the situation and risk. He has that rare skill and knowledge to confront nuclear issues from small but powerful technical and analytic detail to the broad existential implications and complexity of those issues. Today, we face not just the vulnerability of nuclear power plants during war, but the active use of nuclear power plants in waging war. Stan gave us an introduction to Dr. Suzuki's history, a little bit of it. There's much more that could be covered, and I encourage you to take a look at that, but I'd like to just add one thing, which is that he is a member of the Executive Committee and Council of the Pugwash Conferences on Science and World Affairs. And for those of you who are not familiar with Pugwash, it is the leading international organization aiming to develop and support the use of scientific, evidence-based policymaking, focusing on areas where nuclear and weapons of mass destruction risks are present. With that, let me turn it over to Michael, and we can move forward.
Thank you, Joan, so much. Dr. Suzuki, we are so deeply honored to have you return to the Omega webinars for a second time. You know, as you know, our focus is the global poly crisis, all of the environmental, social, technological, financial, economic stressors that are interacting with increasing force, creating this global poly crisis, which has many different names. And the sort of leading things that people think about are climate, COVID, and conflicts without end. And so nuclear tends to be kind of pushed down the list. But it's in the nature of the poly crisis that these different factors will keep surfacing. And little did we anticipate, as people spoke about the poly crisis, that the nuclear issue would recur in this way. I mean, none of us foresaw, or few of us, I should say, foresaw the war in the Ukraine. Some people did. So we're so grateful that you, as really a world authority on this, are rejoining us to help us understand how dangerous is the situation at the Zaporizhzhia plant, and what about the strike by a Russian missile 900 feet from the South Ukraine plant, which I've seen images of it. It was a really big explosion. And so in some way, the Russians seem to be weaponizing threats to nuclear power plants, which to me is astonishing, because if one of these plants melted down, I don't see how President Putin would survive it politically. You know, I just think that would be an event that the blowback into Russia would be extraordinary. So in any case, that's the context. And we welcome your wisdom about the situation, what would be the implications if one of the plants melts down, and how you understand what Putin is doing.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me again to this meeting. I think it's very important to understand the risk of what's happening. And I have to tell you that I'm not really following everything. And I know many other people who might be willing to share more deeper insights. But anyway, I'm happy to talk about my observation, current situation with you and give me your feedback. Let me share the screen. Can you see the screen?
Yes,
Okay.
we can.
All right. So today I just want to talk 4 points. First one is that finally the IAEA team went to the plant and they observed the situation. And so we understand the current situation much better than before, which is very important. And they also their experts remain on the site. That is also very important. However, also all the reactors are shutting down now, so it's also safer than before. But still, as Michael said, that the military activities around the plant continue, and we have to stop them. That's the most important thing. Anything could happen while if the military activities are going on, and a missile attack is probably one of the worst things to happen. But even without attacking directly the plant, many things could happen, and that could lead to worse nuclear accident. So we have to stop the military activities. And the IAEA submitted the report, published the report. This is the second report, which is very good. So you may want to read it. But they identify so-called 7 pillars of the securing nuclear power plant safety, and that should be maintained. Even one of them is not observed, then it could lead to the serious accident. One of the most serious concern is the power loss, and it has already happened that all power, external power, was cut off to supply electricity to the plant, which is necessary to cool down the reactor and also spent fuel. So the power loss is one of the most serious concern we have. And also we have to make sure that the spent fuel pool cooling must be maintained. And spent fuel pool is much more vulnerable than the reactor itself because outside of the containment building. So that's one of the most serious concern we have, and also much more radioactive materials in the spent fuel pool. And finally, there are experts who are making computer simulations. What happened if the serious accident happened at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant? So I will show you some of the results, but which showed which this could be worse than the Chernobyl or Fukushima accident. All right, so 7 pillars. These are the 1, 2, 3, 7 pillars that IAEA identified, which is a very good summary of what should be maintained. The first one, physical integrity. So if the missile attack or anything, any damage to the reactor buildings could lead to serious accident. Particularly the second one, all safety and security systems, that should be maintained. The third one is the staff. That is also a serious situation right now. We don't know actually how much stress, even a physical condition of the staff, and they are maintaining the integrity of the power plant. So their health is very important. And also, as I said, off-site power supply. It is interesting that if you, because nuclear power plant is to generating electricity power, but in order to generating nuclear power, we need an external power supply. And that's very important to know. The fourth thing is the supply chains. They need a component keep coming in, and to maintain the integrity of the plant. That is also very important. Also, fuel. External emergency diesel power plant, you need fuel from outside. So they have a stockpile of roughly 7 days of the fuel, but that is not probably good enough during the war. So logistical supply chains should be maintained. And radiation monitoring, that is very important to understand what's happening at the plant and also the vicinity of the plant. And finally, the communication. So those are 7 pillars. So if you look at the news, whether this one of those 7 pillars are missing is a very important point to watch. This is a picture coming out of the report, and above one, there's a big hole by the probably the bomb or some of the missiles maybe. It is the spent fuel pool above. So it's very serious. And also some of the radioactive waste being stored in this building. So we are shocked to see this big hole. The second one is reactor building. So reactor building actually attacked by the Brits. So these 2 pictures show how serious the situation was at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. And so the recommendation 1 is to make sure that all these military activities will be stopped. And they are proposing to create a nuclear safety and security protection zone, no military zone, around the vicinity of the nuclear power plant. The Director General, Dr. Grossi, has been negotiating with the United Nations and Russia and Ukraine to make this safety zone, but has not been established yet. And there are other recommendations, but those are basically recommendations to protect the so-called 7 pillars. So I don't want to go into detail, but in the report, each recommendation, there are more detailed description of what should be done. So if you're interested in, I think this report is very useful. Okay, this picture shows, this is a typical PWR. If the missile attack here, this wall could be broken. But you remember, this is a reactor. This is a reactor. So even if this is broken, the reactor itself is okay. But if the second missile attack, you never know. And also, this containment building is so-called reinforced concrete containment, roughly 1 to 1.5 meters thick, which is very thick, and reinforced. It's very strong. So they are supposed to resist against airplane crash, but not missile. And also not just one. If the missile 1 or 2, more than 1 missile, this could be broken. The serious problem is if something happened from the reactor because of any damage on the safety cooling systems, this is emergency water supplies. This is very important also. And then the gas is coming out of this reactor vessel. And if this containment building is gone, the gas is directly leaving away from, released to the environment. That's what happened to the Fukushima accident. This concrete containment was broken. So this missile attack does not necessarily lead to the core meltdown itself, but if something happened, this containment building is to protect the gas so not to release to the not to release to the environment. Another important thing is spent fuel pool here is outside this containment building. So if the missile attack this building, this will be broken. This is a serious problem. And so those are the physical image of the plant. This is technical detail, but core meltdown and spent fuel action, technically a little bit different. But the most important thing is for us is to remember, even without saying there is no core meltdown, spent fuel pool accident could release the huge amount of radioactive materials to the environment. That's what this a technical explanation says. So this is a computer simulation done by Jamin Khan, South Korean expert, and Eva Lakovsky. She's a US MIT master student. They have done the computer simulation. This is different weather. This is March 2021 weather. They're using that weather. The left one is the third week and the fourth week. The wind is a little bit different. The top one is core meltdown. The second one is spent fuel pool fire. The third one is combined. So you can see spent fuel pool fire is much more serious than the core meltdown. This is combined. And you can see, depending on the weather, the widespreading area, area contaminated is quite different. This is similar simulation for Rokkasho reprocessing plant. And again, depending on this is October, this is December, the contamination area is quite different. But the spent fuel pool in Rokkasho reprocessing plant is much bigger. The amount of radioactivity, more than 6,000 petabecquerel, is you can see the Chernobyl only released 85 petabecquerel. Fukushima only 20 petabecquerel. So this is huge amount of spent fuel pool in the Rokkasho reprocessing plant. Typically, the 1 gigawatt nuclear power plant contains 370 petabecquerel. So how much could be released is very important to assess the damage. And this is also their calculation of how many people have to be evacuated if the serious accident happened at the Zaporizhzhia. And this is the compulsory evacuation. You have to leave by the law, but it's voluntary. They are expecting some people will leave because of the accident. The area, not only Ukraine, the huge amount of area could be affected by this accident. I think this is the Japanese Rokkasho reprocessing plant. This again, this 391,800 square kilometers is bigger than Japan itself. So the impact of the hypothetical reprocessing plant accident is very, very severe. I think this is the end of my talk. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please.
Thank you so much, Dr. Suzuki. Where to start? Just listening to you, if we were just informally to summarize some of the key things you said, the situation at the plant has been stabilized, it's better.
Yeah.
But the concern about the external power supply, which has been cut before but is now restored, is one critical issue. Secondly, the psychological and physical health of the staff. And thirdly, in addition to the possibility of the meltdown of different numbers of reactors, there's the question of release of radioactive material into the air, and there's the question of the reprocessing plant and what happens if that is also compromised. So I wonder if I got that accurate.
Yes, the final point, there is no reprocessing plant in Ukraine. So that is only for Japan's concern. But it's a spent fuel pool do exist in each nuclear power plant.
Right.
So spent fuel pool accident could happen in Ukraine.
Right. So before we went on, I was asking you, I don't think there is an answer, but we were simply speculating. Why is it that President Putin would threaten nuclear power plants when, if there is an accident, it might well end his reign in Russia? I mean, that's what happened with Chernobyl. And so one would think, just from a pure self-preservation point of view, that he would want a safe zone around nuclear power plants. And so we were speculating about it. It was very, I mean, is it that he is wanting to show that he's willing to threaten doing anything? Is that the way? Are there people who are thinking about this? I mean, how are the people who are expert on gaming these things out? Do we know what they believe is going on there?
I don't know, but the speculation is there are a couple of things. One is, as you said, that he's just threatening. He's not intending to actually destroy the reactor itself. And so far, he hasn't done that. But he's making a serious threat to the West. He could destroy the reactor. This is a similar threat he is making of nuclear weapons. And I don't think he will use nuclear weapon. I don't think he's going to destroy the reactor. However, he could do that anytime. That is a serious threat to the rest of the world. Second point is attacking power lines, attacking power plants is probably one of the military strategies to cut off electricity supply to Ukraine, and which is serious also because Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant was one of the key largest nuclear power plant site and is supplying large amount of electricity, roughly 25% or so of the electricity to Ukraine. So now it's that part of the electricity is cut off. That is a big damage to the Ukraine also. So those are two speculations that I can think of what he's trying to do.
And do we have any evidence at all of how much psychological, physical stress the operators are under? Is anybody able to note that or report on that?
There's a couple of description in the report, but no direct description of how many people were damaged or injured or killed, even killed. I don't think there's any evidence we can talk about the damage done to the operators. But I can see that the Russian soldiers have done to the general public. I'm sure there are physical damage could be done to the operator too. So that's a huge, serious, psychological stress of the operators.
And in terms of human health outcomes, you showed us an extraordinary chart. I wonder if you could put that back up. Is that hard for you to do, the slide where you showed us how many people might need to be relocated, that slide? Is that hard to do?
No, let me share. Can you see it?
Yeah. Can you center it for us so that we can see the whole thing? Oh, there we go. Okay, so relocated populations, week 4, compulsory. Was this for, is this for the Ukraine?
This is for Ukraine, Russia, Romania, Moldova. This is around the area also.
Now let's keep that right there.
Okay.
So this is hypothetical nuclear accidents at the Zaporizhzhia plant, relocated populations for a hypothetical nuclear accident. And if we look at week 4, Ukraine, it's 360,000 to 1.6 million, plus 280,000 to 2.4 million. Turkey, we can all see these numbers. Russia seems very low compared to the others. Why is Russia so low?
Russia is north, depending on the wind direction. And also, Russia is a little bit farther than, I don't know how much Turkey is far from the Ukraine, I'm not sure. Right. But I think this is particularly depending on the weather situation. So,
yeah.
I don't know.
And
sorry.
Review for us the range of health consequences for people in, say, a median exposure calculation. We're talking about, we're talking about millions of people being relocated, but of course the exposures would go far, far beyond that. What do we know about the human health consequences of this kind of accident?
Well, for the Chernobyl accident, people were not told of what's happening at that time, the first week or so. So they received the large radiation. Also, they drank the milk, contaminated milk, particularly the children. That caused serious health impacts on the Chernobyl case. The Japanese case, the evacuation was much faster than the Chernobyl. And the estimated radiation dose was much lower than the Chernobyl. Although the area, I mean, how can I say? And also, that they did not drink contaminated water or milk. So, so far, after 10 years, 11 years, no direct death caused by the radiation damage by the Fukushima accident. That was the report by the government. Some speculated some of the deaths may be caused by the radiation of the Fukushima accident. We just don't know. But in the Chernobyl case, I think roughly 5,000 people already affected by the cancer. Fukushima case, the title of the cancer for children, roughly 200, 300 people, children, title of cancer, but it's not clear whether that is caused by the Fukushima accident. And also, Fukushima case, so-called accident-related death, which means that because of the stress or the patients from the hospital died during the evacuation or after the evacuation. Without the Fukushima accident, they could have survived. So-called accident-related death is more than 3,000 people. So that's the scale of the impact of the accident so far. And so depending on the evacuation and the accident management scenarios, the people who, the direct impact, health impact of the accident could vary significantly. But the more important thing is both Chernobyl and Fukushima, the social, legal, social, ethical impact on the people's lives, cultural impact on the people's lives, irreversible. That's a problem. And people cannot go back to the home country for a long, long time. And so I wouldn't just call that the health impacts is the only problem we have because of a nuclear accident. Also the contaminated land, the Japanese case that decontamination efforts still continue, and it's not possible to decontaminate everything, areas. And Russia did not decontaminate much compared with Japan. So I think, in the particularly also the reactor accident, which I showed last time, the longer lives radioactive nuclides is much larger, like cesium, and so the environmental impact could long last than the nuclear bomb, and that is also another impact that we have to consider.
So imagining again using these week 4 figures, between voluntary and compulsory, we have about 4 million people maximum there that are relocated. How wide again, I know it's how difficult to respond to this, but how large a geographical area would likely be contaminated for a long period of time where it was a great risk to live in it?
Well, this is
Right, there it is for Japan, right.
No, this is Ukraine. This is I don't know. This is I think this is the plant.
Right.
And so it's much wider than Ukraine. This goes to, I think, Russia. I'm not sure. I cannot see the map very well. But anyway, if you combine the reactor accident and the spent fuel accident,
Yeah.
depending on the weather, it's quite different. But this one is much worse than this one. This is March. This is March. This is fourth week of March. This is third week of March. So depending on the weather, this is also, I think I have to show. This one is very serious area of the accident. And again, I have to say, if you compare with the Chernobyl, this is much worse.
Compared to much worse.
I
Right.
think so. I think so. I think there are some numbers here. I think it was numbers. Chernobyl only 85 petabecquerel. I'm not sure how much petabecquerel, but it's depending on, I think, again, there are many assumptions you have to make.
Yes.
So, but remember, you have also 6 nuclear power plants in the Zaporizhzhia. This is only one reactor accident, okay? So if, as I said last time, if one reactor happened at the core meltdown, the operator cannot go close to the power plant. So it is possible second one, third one will go also core meltdown. That's what happened in Japan case. So if,
yes, in that case, if one melted down, can there be an effect, a chain reaction of the others melting down with it?
Yeah, not, I wouldn't call it chain reaction, but yes, you cannot stop. You cannot stop. You cannot control other reactors. So you cannot prevent. Yeah, you cannot prevent. You cannot. You don't know what's going to happen to the next reactor. But basically, it's very difficult to contain the accident if one reactor was. That's what I'm concerned. So if you have 6 nuclear power plants, all core meltdown, Chernobyl is just one. So, and the size is much bigger, roughly 1.5 times bigger than the Chernobyl. So if you 1 times 6 means, or close to 10 times bigger than the Chernobyl. That's what the people were scaring, But that's probably the worst case. But we have to be prepared. If one serious accident happened, I don't know how to contain the nuclear accident. Anyway, so that's what I was worrying about. So,
Joan, were you going to?
Yeah, along those lines, I was going to ask the question. You spoke about the 7 pillars, and a couple of times you said we have to make sure this doesn't happen, or in the affirmative, something does happen. But who makes sure, and how do we do that?
Well, typically, typically the operators are responsible.
So are there backup staff coming in from other nuclear power plants or countries, or it's all on the shoulders?
That wasn't clear from the report. I think because currently my suspicion is all the staff are still same staff, but I'm not sure. They may allow now the replacing of the staff, and that's another serious concern also. So I think it is very important that the reactor management should be returned to the Ukraine, and otherwise we don't know what's going to happen. Since now IAEA staff is on the site, it's probably situation is probably better, and they are probably demanding that the operator should, rotate.
Yeah.
And I heard that also the Russian nuclear operators are on the site, but they have not directly operating the plant. They are also still demanding that the Ukrainian staff will operate the plant. So just in case, I think the Russians could help to contain the accident, the operating the plant. But I think typically the operators know the plant the best, so it's better that the operator of the Ukrainian operators should come back to the plant.
We have a comment from Robert Gold, Dr. Robert Gold. Robert, maybe you can repost that to everyone, but I'll read it. It's right now, it's just a host and panelist. He has a long history with Physicians for Social Responsibility. One would have also expected that Putin would be restrained from attacking Ukraine so as not to risk becoming a salesman for NATO expansion. Major problem is the extraordinary unquestioned reliance on such dangerous systems, nuclear weapons and nuclear plants, for, quote, security, whereby we are on the brink of utter catastrophe. Something to think about in the current context of extending life of Diablo power plant in the US, or continuing nukes at the heart of US policy, as evinced by remarks of Anthony Blinken, Secretary of State, at the UN and the recent failed nuclear non-proliferation treaty talks. We really need first to stop fighting around these facilities and end this war as soon as possible by expedited negotiation. No question about that. And also from Charles Patton at Commonwealth, Dr. Suzuki, I have attended a Pugwash conference where we were doing a documentary on Leo Szilard. It's so good to know that Pugwash science groups continues to address the possibility of nuclear energy accidents. Also from Gwyneth Alexander, depending on wind direction, how far would the potential fallout ultimately reach? Would it become a continent-wide problem? And if so, how long would that take? So those are a few of the comments. Anything you want to pick up on there, Dr. Suzuki?
I have been discussing with the nuclear security experts in Japan how to respond to this Ukrainian crisis. As you already know, that the protection of the nuclear power plants is not designed against the military activities. And legally speaking, probably for all countries, that the operators are not responsible for protecting the plant against military activities. The defense, military people will come in. The question is, we don't know now that the distinction between so-called heavy terrorism attacks and the so-called military activities in terms of action could be very similar. How you define this attack is caused by the terrorists or caused by the military. And so there's a overlapping area that the particular action could be caused by the terrorists or caused by the military action. So then what should we do? Legally speaking, it's very clear, but in the reality, it's not clear. So protection of the nuclear power plant is much, much more difficult. And because of this Ukrainian crisis. And I think it's a good idea to discuss, to investigate the so-called terrorist threats. What kind of terrorist threats we have to consider? For instance, capturing the nuclear power plants is already happened in the Ukraine case. That could be done by terrorists. How are you going to respond? So that's the serious question that we have to face if you have a nuclear power plant. So if you have a nuclear power plant, I would suggest there shouldn't be a war. You should not be involved in the war. But if you want, if you're prepared if you're ready to be in the military action, I think you have to shut down all reactors. And you should be ready to protect the nuclear power plants against military action. So those are very, very difficult things to do. So that's my current thinking. And also, depending on the wind direction, yes, it could go reach to, even under the Chernobyl accident, the radioactive cloud go all over the world, which is significant, but it's the radioactivity amount is very small, so the impact was much less. And even Fukushima accident, the seawater carried radioactive materials around the globe, but it's, again, the amount is not much, so the impact will be not much. But so radioactive cloud could go anywhere if once it is released to the environment. But I think important is the wind, and also whether it rains or snows. If it rains, the radioactive materials go down to the ground, and that's a serious part. So if the weather is okay, the radioactive materials will go outside. So the wind and the weather is a critical factor to assess the environmental impact.
I know that when Fukushima took place, that in our last webinar, you talked about how it impacted your own thinking on nuclear safety.
Yes.
With this continuing unfolding of nuclear accidents and threats to nuclear plants, are you continuing to reassess your own sense of whether nuclear power is a viable long-term option?
Well, as I said, I think nuclear power is like a strong medicine with a strong side effect. So if you need to take a medicine, you have to be careful about what the side effects are. My thinking is side effects is much more serious than I thought. So I wouldn't take the medicine until I feel I'm dying. But so it's better to keep you a healthy body, healthy conditions. That's most important. So that you don't have to depend on nuclear power. And but the globe right now, the Earth is facing climate change. This is a serious threat also. So if you need to take medicine like a nuclear power, you may need nuclear power in some countries, but have to should be carefully done. And you have to know not only the benefits of nuclear power, you have to know the risk of nuclear power. That's my kind of thinking. In Japan, I already been suggesting that we should reduce the dependence on nuclear power as soon as possible.
Are you following, I imagine you are, some of the advances in thinking about nuclear energy, the fusion conversations, but above all, I read somewhere about experiments in Sweden with very small floating nuclear plants that if they go critical, they sink. And so they remain radioactive, but the point is that there's not the threat of a bigger meltdown. Have you followed what's going on with those experiments?
I don't know. I don't know that experiment, but there are proposals, actually, so-called innovative design, which has a feature so-called inherent safety, which means that without any human intervention, that the reactor could be shut down very safely. And that has been proposed for more than probably 30 years. And unfortunately, it's too innovative for the reactor operators to operate. That's the problem. Also, it's too innovative for the licensing, nuclear regulatory licensing. People have to figure it out how to regulate such kind of reactor. So practically speaking, even if the so-called innovative reactors are demonstrated right now, I don't know how many reactors will be actually ordered by the operators. And the economics also are not certain. And also, like this, even if this reactor, current Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plants are so-called inherent safety reactors, the still risk still remain. So risk cannot be eliminated. But if you build a nuclear power plant, of course, the better safety future is better. But again, the risk remains, so you have to be very careful. So there's no risk-free nuclear power plant.
Joan, any further reflection?
Oh, well, a couple of questions. One of them deals with this issue of spent fuel. And as you mentioned, that's clearly a vulnerability at the power plants and has been in other accidents and will be around for a long time, even if we're able to move away from nuclear. Are there, major efforts to deal with the spent fuel in less vulnerable ways?
Yes, the best short-term answer is to move the spent fuel from pool to so-called the dry cask, which is much more resilient, and you don't need the power to cool. It's air cooled. And at the Fukushima accident site, there are a couple of so-called dry cask spent fuel storage, and the building was damaged by the tsunami, but the cask was safe. So I think the world is moving swiftly right now. If you can shift the spent fuel pool to dry cask storage, the risk will be much smaller. So that's one possibility. And of course, if you dispose the waste under the ground, geological disposal, in terms of against military activities, but not much safer.
Right. So I have a question, very different sort of question, but I have found that colleagues and friends in Europe are very, very worried this issue. And they feel impatient with those of us in the US feel like what I've been told, that we're not taking it seriously. We don't realize what it means to, their lives. I mean, and I don't know, is there anything that we can do just to bring maybe front and center, and I'm talking a little bit US centric, and here front and center what this is actually meaning to the rest of Europe? That's not just Ukraine, it's not just Russia, but all of Europe.
Well, remember 9/11, the hijackers were trying to attack with an airplane on the nuclear power plant. And it was obvious that they are trying to make a serious accident by the airplane crash. That's why we are now, the containment building is against the airplane crash. But terrorists could cause similar risk like this. That's what I'm worrying about. If the terrorists are watching this event, I can see how we can threat the people. This can be done not by the military activities, but could be done by power cutoff, spent fuel pool, capturing the plant. That can be done by terrorist groups. So we have to be, if you have a nuclear power plant or if you have a radioactive materials, risk is there all over the world. So I'm concerned about, the military activities, that such kind of military activities is probably unconceivable just, 1 year ago, but that happened. Then I think terrorist activities could be more likely. That's my concern.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Just to harvest a few more comments again from Bob Gould of PSR. Primary prevention of the nuclear weapons threats we're facing can be explored within work of the Back from the Brink campaign. And Chet Suzuki, a valued colleague, has provided some wonderful links. You can all see the other comments. Cheryl Patton from Commonweal has been working with Ukrainian firefighters and wonders, is any training occurring in the Ukraine for firefighters in case the site is seriously compromised? I think Cheryl would probably know that better than anyone, since she's been getting assistance to Ukrainian firefighters. I have two questions. The first is, I read somewhere some time ago when I was thinking about nuclear accidents, what the recommendations were for people in exposed zones, just about what to do if there's a major exposure. And let's imagine for a second that they are not in the zone that requires evacuation, but they're concerned about exposures that they think are a worry for their health. And what I remember is being told to stay indoors and keep the windows and everything shut. But then I remember that there was some indication that the fallout wouldn't be over very quickly, and it was really useful to have a radiation meter before you went outside to determine when it's safe to go back outside. What would you say to people who want to be prepared for this possibility, whether in Europe or in the United States or anywhere else? How long would one want to shelter indoors? Is it easy to get meters that will tell you when it's safe? And just what are the practical dimensions of that?
Well, I think the radiation monitoring is very, very important. And if you have a nuclear power plants, already the radiation monitoring is there. So in the Fukushima case, unfortunately, if the power was cut off, at that time, the power was cut off. So the radiation monitoring was also cut off. That was a problem. So people have to go there to monitor the radioactivity. But that's one very important. So you need a battery for monitoring, radiation monitoring also. That's for sure. And also the film batch for yourself. And radiation monitoring is just the monitoring sampling, not a particular spot. You have to go, there's a hot spot, so-called, radioactive materials can concentrate in particular area. You have to go and monitor those things, not by monitoring area, but monitoring post is only one particular spot, so you cannot monitor everywhere. So you need to monitor other areas also with your own activities. If you want to go outside the contaminated area, you need a film batch to wear the film batch all the time. Right after the accident, if the radioactive clouds coming in, the iodine you have to take iodine, particularly the children. Don't drink the contaminated water or milk or whatever, eat food. And so monitoring of food are also very important. And I think those are and then probably in the radiation monitoring right now in Fukushima case, after 10 years, roughly cesium is 32 years, half the time, I think. So 10 years is roughly half. And no, not half, sorry, 1/4. And I think, so it's from now on.
It's a gradient.
Yeah, the radiation level is going down very, very slowly. The first first 10, 15, 16 years is probably rapidly going down, and then very slowly. So from now on, it's very difficult to expect the radiation level is going down very quickly. So the first 10 years is very important.
Robert Isaacson just put a really nice link.
Yeah.
Ready.gov, nuclear explosion. So anyway, that's a simple along the lines that we've been talking about. My second question is Ted Koppel wrote a book, the famous US journalist, called Lights Out, where he took a serious look at the threat from either terrorists or hostile powers to the US power grid as a whole. And he pointed out that various hostile powers have completely mined the US grid, and we've mined the grids of other people, other states. So there's kind of a nuclear-like standoff where we could take down the Russian grid or whatever, and the Russians could take down ours. If somebody takes down the power grid, it can be many months before power can be restored. That suggests that a non-trivial possibility is that somebody takes down the grid, and with diesel generators providing relatively short periods of time of power, we should be concerned. Actually, Joan Diamond and I and others in Omega had some real conversations on this. But again, the interactivity of these different possibilities is extraordinary. You don't have to be attacking the plant itself. If you take down the grid, there's a serious issue.
Yes. Basically, the life sustaining infrastructure is very important to protect those life supporting infrastructure, power, water, food. So not just nuclear power plants. You're right that those are the key infrastructure you have to protect. I think that's what the military activities are trying to do, to protect the lifeline infrastructure. There are plans to, of course, backup supply electricity. But I think, you remember Hurricane Katrina. If you cut off all lifeline, it will take a long time to recover. That's for sure.
Right.
But it is difficult to destroy everything at one time. So there is always possibility of cover up. If, for instance, electricity, you may get electricity from other part of the country or other part of the Europe. So you have to arrange. You have to be cooperative if someone is short of electricity, and that kind of arrangement, regional grid, is very important. We don't have it, Japan. Yes.
Thank you. Joan, you remember our conversations on this. Would you like to add anything about the threats to the grid and nuclear power?
No, it's just that we worked with Bob Budnitz, who did a nice little paper for us on some of the redundancies in the system.
Yes.
But I read an article yesterday that sort of said this, it's a little bit over a statement. Don't worry so much about nuclear. The real threat is cyber war.
Yeah.
The cyber war can take us out in terms of the energy, food, water, the infrastructure, more effectively and quicker. And that we are not paying enough attention to that threat, either state-sponsored cyber war or the sort of terrorist cyber.
I agree.
I just want to note there may be some people who need to leave us at the top of the hour. We thank you. We're going to stay on with Dr. Suzuki for a little more time, and we welcome you all staying on. I want to harvest some of the wonderful comments. We can't respond to them all, but Robert Gould writes, an appropriately skewered in follow-up response by the New York City campaign to abolish nuclear weapons a week later, and what reached millions. So there are all kinds of beautiful comments here. Robert Isaacson notes, we've been talking about it, Ukraine says second largest nuclear plant hit by Russian attacks. And we noted that. I'm just trying to think what the most valuable direction. Dr. Suzuki, what have we not talked about yet that from your point of view, as you just look at the overview, would be most useful for us to keep in mind? We've been asking you about threats that we can see. You have all this immense experience and you are deeply connected with the most serious scientific and policy thought. What have we not asked you about? What is what seems really critical that we haven't considered?
Well, one of the biggest lessons we learn from Fukushima is think unthinkable. That is difficult. So if you are too close to the current situation, think unthinkable is very difficult because you tend to be more optimistic. So you need some kind of expert group to questioning always. Okay, just think unthinkable. Like I think your group, like your group, I think it's very important for your group to raise the issue that okay, the common sense may think this is the way to go, but the world is full of unexpected surprises. So you have to be ready. You have to be prepared for unthinkable situation, unfortunately. And that is a good exercise. You need to do it daily as a daily exercise. Otherwise, in my own experience, that people tend, even under the crisis situation, people tend to think to be optimistic. Okay, this will not happen. I think this will work, and so everything should be okay. That's that's the people's set of mind, and I think so. If you are in the situation like this, think unthinkable is probably the most important exercise you have to remember. I have one quick answer to the question that is there any way to decontaminate the water? Yes, we have a way to decontaminate water, like a filter to absorb the radioactive materials or separating chemically, which is very difficult, but that could be done also. So we are decontaminating the water from Fukushima reactor itself right now.
Is that something that can be done with an affordable filter at home, or is it a high?
Yes. There's
What-
I don't think it's cheap. I think it's better to be a more centralized system, but there is a filter. Just a regular filter is also helpful.
Okay.
Even just a regular filter at home is helpful. So don't drink the water without any filtering. For not only for radioactive materials, but also contaminated water. So it is possible, yes.
So from a point of view of a family somewhere in the world, somewhere in Europe, concerned about the very real possibility that it could go wrong in the Ukraine with one of these plants. Iodine tablets, are they good for the adults as well as the kids, or just
I think the kids is more important. If you have a limited number of iodine breaths,
Right.
you should give it to the children and young women also.
And then you would need, if you're going to shelter indoors, you're going to need water and food and other necessities for what? At least a week, maybe several weeks?
At least a week. I think at least a week.
All right.
And that should be a good, yeah.
And is there, what kind, are the meters to measure radiation outdoors inexpensive and readily available?
Yes, we have carrier, portable.
Right.
You can see them on the web for around $100.
Not too expensive, not too expensive.
Wonderful. Joan, any other questions?
No, but I feel that I personally have shifted in the last few months regarding thinking about, what could happen with nuclear power plants. I mean, I don't think I was particularly unrealistic or uninformed in February, but things that, I didn't imagine weaponizing. a power plant, though, I can be pretty grim on other topics. But if one follows your logic, Tatsu, and we really need to move away from any sort of nuclear power, and that it just can't, that given terrorism, given state actors, given threats, given the world we're living in, then that has, incredible implications for, for how we live, what we need in terms of energy and our country and lifestyles. And that's just another level of the sobering thinking that's necessary.
Yeah, but I agree. But climate change is also very serious.
Yeah.
And also, I would think that it's not the nuclear power plant which is the bad thing itself, but the war.
Mhm.
I think the war. I cannot think of such a lively broadcasting the war to the rest of the world. This is incredible, and
Mhm.
under the current 21st century, but this war is visible, but cyber war cannot be visible. That's
Right.
another serious concern. So I think my lesson is not just nuclear power plant. I think we have to prevent the war. We have to finish the war. And that's most important. I think the Pugwash also is dedicated to not just abolishing the nuclear weapons, but abolishing the war itself. Otherwise, the risk of catastrophic event remains all over the world.
So cyber is we also
serious,
have to
very
remember
serious.
a weapon of mass
Yes,
destruction.
yes.
And
Possible.
as you pointed out, Dr. Suzuki, the possibility of terrorist attacks, whether by cyber or direct attacks, is there in addition to war as a primary.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Suzuki, this has been extraordinarily helpful to us,
Oh,
and
thank you.
we're so grateful to you for coming back. I think one of the takeaways for me is that the health impact may actually be less prominent than simply the massive relocation of people in, 4 million people perhaps.
Yeah.
And the immense impact of that culturally, economically, financially, psychologically on Europe. And just so one can see that an accident here might really rearrange geopolitical relationships, cultural, it would be an immense event. And not only for Europe, but around the world. And so we can't foresee it, but what we can do is if we imagine it and chart out not only the things that we've talked about now, but talk to people who really think clearly about the chain of events that might follow from it, then the question is, what would be the opportunity that came with this immense disaster for shifts in national, regional, and global institutions so that we could drive them through in that moment which a global crisis creates. And I wonder who the people are who are doing the best thinking on what not only the catastrophe and preparing for it, but what the opportunity would be, which might be a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Yeah, I think in this case, for instance, you have to thank the existence of IAEA.
Yes.
Without IAEA, it's very difficult for outsiders to go into that plant objectively to assess the situation. So thank God that the United Nations has an international IAEA. So we need some kind of international scheme to respond to this crisis. WHO against pandemic and climate change. We don't have any international organizations against climate change. So I think international cooperation in a way that more systematically respond to the catastrophic event, we need this kind of scheme to respond and cooperatively and also professionally. That's my lesson from this current crisis. But I think the most important is stop the war. Yeah. Even if the nuclear power plants now, even if the so-called safety zone is created as IAEA is proposing, that's only for nuclear power plant. And as long as war continues, it's very sad to see the film of the video of the villages and the towns are destroyed by this war. So.
Well, we cannot thank you enough. I want to tell all those who stayed with us that we're going to capture the chat and send it out to you all so that you have a record of all the wonderful comments that people made, that we haven't been able to get to all of them. Dr. Suzuki, Joan Diamond, I'm going to give you the last words here before we close and turn it over to Stanley.
I just want to say thank you. I mean, it's been a very rich conversation with a lot of notes and things to think about. So thank you very much. And thank you, Michael.
It's a great joy. Stanley,
thank you very much.
We turn it back over to you, Stanley.
Dr. Suzuki, thank you so much. Michael, Joan, thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate your time and we appreciate you being here. A recording of this webinar will be made available on omega.ngo and the Resilience Project websites. If you're interested in receiving more invitations to events like this, you can register on our website. And thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you again on our next webinar.
Thank you, Dr. Suzuki.
Thank you.
Take care.